These images are a selection of artworks depicting the Passion Week from Palm Sunday to Easter Sunday. As you look at each image, it can be helpful to ask yourself a couple of questions. Do you like it? Why or why not? What story is it telling? How does it make you feel? What do you think the artist is trying to tell us about what they or their society believed about God? How might they be inviting us into worship? Does it tell us anything new or different about the story? I also think it's important to keep in mind two things that may appear contradictory, but that actually hang together quite well as we look at art. The first is that whatever you see in a work of art is okay. You don't have to understand everything to engage with art. You're allowed to think, feel, and see whatever it is that you do. Secondly, your experience of art can be enhanced by learning about and understanding more about art, about the symbolism and about the history. The first part of this encourages us to enter into art, no matter how unknowledgeable we may feel about it, because we can always engage on a personal level. The second part is to encourage us to learn even more about art and see how others, including the artist, may have interpreted it, because there are symbolic and iconic traditions which people still today can follow that help us interpret these artworks. The first image, the entry into Jerusalem, is related to Luke 19:28-40. The entry into Jerusalem by Giotto has this beautiful, rich blue colour. Blue is the colour of the sky, symbolising heaven, heavenly love and truth. There are no clouds in the sky, symbolising the witness of truth, because blue skies appear after the clouds are dispelled. It is a beautifully symmetrical painting showing the order of God. The crowd on our right is eager to see Jesus. The disciples on our left seem a bit reluctant to engage, and in contrast, the donkey in the centre seems to be striding forward, almost with a smile. And in fact, she is much clearer than the disciples, as though the donkey is very important, so pleased and proud to be carrying Christ. One ear is facing forward towards where they are headed. One ear is turned back, listening for Jesus. Christ has his fingers raised in a traditional sign of the blessing. In traditional icons, the most important element in the image are the largest, irrespective of perspective. Here Jesus is slightly larger than everyone else, as might be expected, but the donkey also seems to be. What might this be saying about the painter's understanding of this story? The next image is the triumphant entry into Jerusalem by contemporary artist Chi. While the faces may seem sombre, the image also seems to radiate so much joy simply because of the multitude of colours, and in particular the stances of the people in the back. Their movements bring life to a static painting. Chi says that through his art he is trying to make Christianity seem less foreign to Chinese people by inviting them to see the stories of God in their own culture. While he draws from Chinese traditional painting, he also draws very strongly from a lot of traditional and contemporary European art. We might see references to Picasso here, or to a glass-stained window. The next image, the washing of the feet, is related to John 13:1-17. In this painting, we see Jesus in the act of washing Peter's feet. While there is one disciple busily taking off their shoes to be next, there is also only one disciple completely turned away from Christ, and we can only just see the back of their head. Above the disciples there is a white cloth draped over a rail, symbolising the purity of Christ and falling in a shape reminiscent of the cross. The door behind Christ is open, ready for him to leave, as is the door to the right, open for Judas, maybe. The next image is the Last Supper by Peter Candid. This relates to Mark 14:12-26. This beautiful Last Supper painting is similar to many other Last Supper paintings in terms of general composition. However, I really appreciate this one because of how close-knit everybody is. There is no distance between those depicted, nor from our invitation into it. The disciples sit with each other and Christ as friends. There is one disciple alone who has his back to us completely to the left, and who is turned away from Jesus. In contrast, there is also one disciple facing us directly, looking at us as though to be inviting us to join the space next to him. The next image, the betrayal of Jesus, relates to Matthew 26:47-50. This is such a dramatic image, but it's not really surprising given that it's a Caravaggio, and it's quite different to the other paintings we have looked at so far. This is from a different school of art, a different process, a different intention, a different time. This is not an icon meant for quiet contemplation. This is a piece where we are thrown into the action and meant to feel something as though we were part of it. Judas's kiss is in motion, and the soldiers are ready to pounce. Behind, to the left, is the disciple fleeing, concerned only for themselves. And yet, just to the left of centre, Jesus is depicted as being calm, as though just waiting for what is to come. Jesus is certainly the character most brilliantly lit. All the action moves towards or is pushed away from him as the main focus. Each person is fully engrossed in their role in this story. This is not only a dark story in theme, but visually. Only moments of light are given, just a few here and there. Jesus' face, the shine of the soldier's armour. The next image is Jesus led from Caiaphas to Pilate, and in this painting we see chaos. There are people everywhere. It is like the festival spirit of the week before when Jesus entered Jerusalem but gone horribly wrong. We still see palm branches held by the kids in the front, but the child in the very front and the centre has a horribly distorted sneer on their face. Jesus is to the left up the back, dressed in brown, the colour of earth, of humanity, blending in, being dragged along, possibly about to be swallowed up by the crowd any moment now. People no longer have their hands raised in joy, but in anger. Pilate washing his hands relates to Matthew 27:24. In Pilate washing his hands, he is being served by a young slave boy the bowl to wash his hands in. Everything about this image puts Pilate in a place of power. He is large, he is central, he is in the light, he has servants, he has power over everyone and everything. And yet he is hunched over. The soldier to the right, down the bottom of the painting, is standing much more confidently, leaning back, the complete opposite of Pilate's body shape. Pilate is right in the centre and looks directly at us. Is he saying, "I have made my decision"? Or is he asking, "Have I made the right one?" The next painting is Jesus mocked by the soldiers by Manet. To me, this painting is all about discomfort. I don't find it a pleasant image, although it is beautifully painted. But I think I find it this way because of how uneasy it makes me feel. Therefore, I think it's probably a very successful painting. Jesus is so vulnerable. Not only physically, he is tied up, and there is a spear right near him, but he is also the only one who looks a bit pitiful being naked. The men behind him aren't completely covered, and yet their body, their skin, doesn't look out of place. Jesus is clearly the centre of the painting, and yet he has the least power. The whole process of the cross, the leading up to it, the actual crucifixion, was an experience of extreme violence, pain and suffering, but it was also one of extreme degradation and humiliation. It was a drawn-out process. Everything about it was meant to remind the person being crucified, and everybody watching, Not only are we going to kill you, we are going to make sure everybody sees you at your worst. Die harder. Luke 23:44-49. Die Harder is a sculpture by contemporary artist David Mack. It is made entirely out of wire coat hangers, straightened so they appear to be sticking out of the body. The sculpture is in a very traditional position, and yet with slight variations, the scream, the curl of the hand. The artist writes, "The figure of Christ is in pain and anguished, pierced by thousands of spears, that single body acting as a conduit for all the cares and the woes." Angus Day. It is another contemporary work. The artist has written about his process for this piece, which was sparked by singing a song with the line, "The Lamb of God slaughtered for us," which prompted him to ask, do we still know what that is all about? And he writes, "I bought a lamb. I filmed it during its birth, its life, and while it was being slaughtered. I stood face to face with the essence of this biblical theme. An innocent animal, barely half a year old, is brought to the slaughter without resisting, without having done anything wrong. Next, I had the lamb stuffed. I built an altar of newspapers piling up the inability of human beings to live in peace. Unfolding the papers, I found this title, 'Man is capable of anything.' It was an article about the Holocaust. The moment the lamb put its head next to this title and the photo of Auschwitz, it became to me a touching icon of Jesus himself, who voluntarily gave his life as a blameless and everlasting sacrifice. Women at the empty tomb, relating to Mark 16:1-7. This is a very traditional icon, where everything is meant to mean something, the colours, the position of the people, the environment. But it is for this one particular element that I included it here. It's a little tricky to notice, but if you look closely at the wrapped body of Christ, you will see that it appears that there is no face. Jesus has risen. He is not there. But it is as though Jesus' body has simply disappeared, and yet the wrappings have stayed in place. The final image for today is the resurrection by Rembrandt. The resurrection is difficult to portray because no one was there to witness exactly what happened. However, numerous people have tried to give some form of visual image to this theological idea, with varying degrees of success, it might be said. But I find this one very interesting because of the choices made, but also because there isn't a lot of information about this piece to explain exactly what is going on. It isn't a very well-known one of Rembrandt's, and it wasn't at all well received when he initially presented it. There isn't much to fully explain everything that is happened here, but this is what I see. Firstly, remember, it is not a historically accurate portrayal. It is a theological reflection. To the left, down near the front, there is a coffin in which Jesus sits. He appears seated, and he may be in the process of standing up and rising, but I think it is just as likely that this is an artistic choice, so that he is visible to us. The only definite information about this painting that I have found so far says that the risen Jesus is the light behind the angel in the centre of this painting. To me, this light, this risen Lord, appears to be radiating out of the physical Jesus. Even more interestingly, the people who are there to witness this are physically being blown away from the lifting tomb. The angel holds the top of the tomb in the centre of the painting, and the people to the left are a jumbled pile on the other side of the painting to Jesus. It is like this is a still from a contemporary movie. It is very dramatic, and it has a great deal of movement. I don't think Rembrandt was trying to separate body and soul here, but I think that it was done to emphasise the unknown quality of being raised from the dead and the supernatural element of trying to depict someone being physically risen. How might we depict the risen Lord? What ideas would we focus on? The most difficult part of this painting for me is the fact that Rembrandt painted this after his firstborn son was born and died within a year. While this is the last image for this series, it is not the end of the story. It is not even the complete telling of this story, but hopefully it has given you some images to carry with you during the Passion Week. Maybe it will help you live the story. Maybe it will help you allow the story to come alive in a different way. Maybe it will encourage you to consider the story from different perspectives. Maybe it will invite you to worship. I hope that this Easter week might be one where you are able to follow the story, reflecting on the many different events and the path that Jesus followed. And that as you follow Jesus' path in remembrance, allow yourself to be involved in the story and to see it unfolding before you. May you carry the images with you. May you think of the story of this week, and may you be open to God speaking into your thoughts, prayers, and actions.